What's up, guys? Today we're gonna be talking about Rainbow Six Siege. I know, a little different. Most of you guys know me for my Counter-Strike content, and you obviously know that I love the game. I love Counter-Strike, and I plan on hopefully maybe becoming a professional player, or at least being involved in Counter-Strike esports in some way. But today we're gonna be looking at a brand new up-and-coming esport. Well, I won't really call it brand new, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Siege. And Siege is an awesome game. I love it a lot. I've been having a lot of fun playing it during this kind of lull period with the CS team, and I've even started competing at a small level with it. So yeah, without further ado, let's kick it off. What I want to talk about in today's video is what I think that Siege needs in order to improve and become not only a better esport but a better game for casual players. Before I talk about the bad, let's talk about some of the good things that Siege does, because there's quite a bit of good things that Siege does. Siege takes a very different approach to the FPS genre than a lot of the other games like Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, or even some of the smaller games do. Counter-Strike, for example, relies a lot more on mechanical skill, twitch reflexes. It also requires a lot of fundamental knowledge about not only the map, but the game itself. You know, how to move properly, peek things properly, use your grenades efficiently, and all that fun stuff. And it feels like a more micro approach to the game, and that way it requires skill to differentiate yourself from the next best players. In a game like Counter-Strike, the tiny things matter, but it feels like in a game like Siege, it's more of the macro things. And what I mean by a macro approach is that Siege feels like a big picture game. It's not as much about the tiny details on your spray control or your movement, or even the way you peek things. Siege is more about positioning and awareness of where the enemies are, and positioning yourself to get a better chance at killing them, right? Putting yourself in a better position, whether it be setting up a deployable shield to watch a certain staircase, or maybe blowing a certain hole in a wall to watch a staircase from a different angle that's really offset, or maybe shooting up to the floor, or just anything like punching a hole in the wall so that you can see through a tiny little pixel to watch a certain window. That's kind of a more macro approach to the game. And obviously in a game like Siege, spray control isn't as big of a deal. The spray patterns are very easy to learn. You can shoot a lot more accurately while moving than you can in a game like Counter-Strike, where it's pretty much impossible to kill someone. And that's really what I mean by macro approach. It's instead of relying on the tiny details of movement and spray control, it relies more on positioning and just awareness. And that's something else too about the game. The aim in Siege feels different. Now, on a mechanical level, it's relatively the same. You've got tracing aim, flick aim, all that kind of fun stuff that you would have in a game like Counter-Strike. But in Siege, I don't know, it just feels different. Just something between the leaning and the way that different characters move at different speeds. It just feels different, but in a good way. I like it. I like the way it feels. All these things combine to create a very fun tactical based shooter, and everything about this game feels really, really good, down to how you play it, the way you're supposed to play it, positioning, breaching walls. Everything just feels really, really good about this game, and it's a completely different approach, and they did wonders with it. But like every game out there, Siege obviously has its downfalls, between bugs and just different mechanics in the game that don't make a lot of sense to newer players and even more experienced players. This game has got a decent enough list running for it, like most games, so that's not even anything against. So let's first talk about some of the bugs the game has, and I'm not going to be like a nitpicker and go over all the tiny stuff. I'm just going to talk about the really, really big, seemingly game breaking ones, and just the ones that come to off the top of my head. Nothing like, I'm not going to go through like a full-on list of all kinds of crazy stuff, so don't worry about that. The first one that pops in my head is the Hibana charges. They are broken right now. It's happened to me many times, where you shoot the Hibana charges on a wall and the animation plays, right? They light up and they're about to go off. It plays the sound and everything, and then they just don't go off. The animation just stays there and then stops after a little bit, and nothing happens. And especially in a ranked game, that can seriously screw you and your team over, and it's kind of a disaster. It's a really, really bad bug. So that's gonna be my number one on the list. Those kind of bugs cannot be in a game like this. Otherwise, it literally causes huge issues. Another bug is with fuse charges. And the thing about the fuse charges is that it feels like the physics on them is really bugged right now. I've seen them phase through walls, floors, and also sometimes like, so what's supposed to happen is when you fuse a room, the fuse charge goes in and like bounces a little bit and goes pretty far, right? But sometimes the physics bugs out and it'll hit the ground and go like soaring across the fucking sky. And I've seen it literally like go through a doorway, bounce off a wall, go flying out a window and like kill someone like across like the map. Like, it's insane. And not only that, but the fact that their radius feels really overpowered right now. Like, just for a single charge, it feels like it can kill you across an entire room. And there's, you know, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of ways to counter Fuse. Like, it feels like Fuse is one of those characters that should be OP to a certain extent. But the main thing is the physics bugs, because when those happen, it can be so irritating. When I'm on like a lower floor and a fuse bug glitches to the ground and injures me or something like that, that can be really annoying and cause huge problems in a ranked match. Yeah, those are the two main bugs that just pop up in my head. Obviously there's a ton of tiny ones that don't really matter too much, like the drone bugs on maps like Coastline, where they like glitch out and they like stutter lag and vent and stuff. But like I said, I'm not really here to nitpick on the game's bugs, just give my personal opinions and suggestions on certain things. Another thing I'm going to touch on real quick is lag compensation. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that Siege does lag compensation bad, but sometimes it does feel a little broken. Now, to be fair, there's not a single FPS game out there that does not have lag compensation or netcode problems, and Siege is no exception to that fact. The main problem with lag compensation and netcode is that the idea is to bring people on the far ends of the spectrums closer to the middle. But because of that, there's always going to be certain people that are towards the middle or towards one of the extremes that are going to feel like they're getting robbed out of certain things when the game punishes them by allowing players that maybe have a worse connection or a better connection to do certain things that you can't. Because in the system's mind, it's bringing everyone to a happy medium, but sometimes that can cause problems for people that aren't in that happy medium, right? Because of that, you can never truly have a game that has like insanely good lag compensation. There's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be a very vocal minority. Even if it works 95% of the time, the 5% of the time that it doesn't work, it's going to be a very vocal minority because they feel like the game is broken for them even when it's not. So like I said, it's not, lag compensation in this game is not too big of an issue, but there have been instances where it does fuck up and it does cause problems, like every game. Now let's get into what I think that Siege needs to improve on a physical level. One thing that is really blaring to me is the clutter in all the maps. Please, for the love of God, get rid of all the clutter on these maps. From a realism standpoint, I understand why it's there, because it's supposed to simulate a real environment in these high stress situations. But at the same time, like, it feels clunky. It can cause problems, like when you've got a pile of soda cans for no reason in like the side of a hallway in like some mansion. Like when you're walking in a hallway and all of a sudden you get pushed up by like a couple inches for no reason by like a pile of trash. Like, I don't know, it just feels like wasted objects in the map. And on top of that, another thing about the clutter is there are certain things like piles of objects, like maybe a chair with like a bookshelf leaning against it or something like that, where it's supposed to, one, provide cover and also supposed to block off like OP angles. And I get why those kind of things are there, but instead of having like a really strange like chair with like a bookshelf with like books sticking out of it and like broken pieces of wood that are like jutting out, like just put like a big box there, or like one bookshelf that just stands and blocks off the angle. And in that way, you create a less cluttered environment. So, because what happens with those types of things is when you're trying to vault over them or peek around them, it's really easy to get clipped onto them or stuck. And it causes a really clunky play around those types of objects, and they're everywhere. They're in every hallway, doorways, rooms, they're everywhere. So just really simplifying those types of things, just putting a box there or putting a bookshelf instead of like having a like I said, like a chair with like a bookshelf leaning on it with like shit sticking off of it. Just literally just put like a bookshelf or put a chair. Don't like just go all over the board, because what ends up happening is, one, it causes optimization problems because there's a lot more meshes in the game, and two, it causes clipping issues. You get stuck. It just is like a mess in terms of angles and that kind of stuff. I feel like changing those things would make the game a lot more fluid in the way you move around the map and play. I don't know, it's just my personal opinion. Another thing that I think desperately needs a rework is the lighting system in the game. Now, I understand why they put so much bloom in the game, and it's obviously meant to deter peeking on both sides and trying to use those overpowered windows and stuff. But the way it is now is it literally is like blinding. If someone pops a window, like let's say on a map like Chalet, right? When you're in like a room, like when you're in a master bedroom or something like that, and someone's on the balcony and they bust a window and they're looking in, all you see is just white, but they can see you perfectly. So it feels really overpowered in those types of scenarios. Now, obviously people are going to give the argument, well, just position yourselves better so you're not exposed to those types of peaks. And to that, fair enough, right? I can agree with that. But the thing is when you're even playing against a remotely, like even in ranked, you're going to come across teams that are like this. When you're playing even against a remotely competent team, even in casual, you're going to run across teams like this that actually shoot the cameras and are just remotely smart with the way they do things. It can be nearly impossible to know exactly where they're going to be peeking you from, especially on a map like House or Chalet, where there's like windows everywhere. There's no place where you can be 100% safe from everything. The only things you can do is minimize your risk, and even then you've got to imagine that your teammates are doing the same exact thing, and that's going to take up a lot of your spots. So there's obviously going to be some players that are going to be stuck in hard to hold positions, and just having that bloom is a huge advantage for the attacking side sometimes. Another thing that people are going to say is realism, right? That's how it is in the real world, right? When you're in the dark and you're looking out into the light, the difference can mess with your eyes. And to that, like, come on, I think we're past the time in gaming where people are going to pull the realism card, or at least should be pulling the realism card, right? I mean, like when you're talking about a game like Siege, right? Siege is a competitive shooter. It's not a realism simulator thing. It's not some sort of military simulator like Arma or something. It's literally like, it's a competitive shooter. The idea is to create a fair competitive environment, right? And when you have a bloom that is that overpowered, where you're like sitting in a bathtub like trying to hold an objective, and some dude busts like a hole in the window that's like that fucking big, right? And all you see is the glare, and you're like, what the hell? And you get shot by the guy. And when you see the kill cam, you literally, he peeks, he stands there for a second, you don't even see, there's no lighting difference, and he just perfectly sees you as if like nothing's wrong, and he just shoots you in the head. It can be really frustrating. And it's not only the windows that can have this problem. I've had times where people breach things and it's really difficult to see out the holes, or even inside. When people breach walls towards bomb sites, the dust that flies everywhere with the lights on the roofing, it can seriously cause some issues sometimes, and it makes it really hard to see things. Here's what I think you could change with the lighting, right? So if you're going to cut down the bloom, right, the first thing that's going to do is that it's going to allow players to peek the outside a lot more efficiently, I guess you could say. Now, one thing, right, that I want to just go ahead and say about that right off the bat is I think that's okay. Allowing players a better chance to peek the outside towards the spawns just gives the defenders a little bit easier of a time of stalling the attackers. And to some extent, I think that's fine, right? But obviously, most of the maps have so many windows, there's no way for 5 attackers to be able to hold all of them while trying to breach into the building to begin with, then have to clear all the angles, and it can obviously cause a ton of problems, allowing the defenders to peek so aggressively into the spawn. So this is how I would combat something like that. Maybe you add an operator that can tell when they break the windows, or not even an operator, just add a system in the game, how, you know, it alerts you when someone on the defending side jumps out a window and goes on the outside. Maybe you add a system where it alerts if they break a window or something like that. Who knows? That's just a suggestion. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Now, another thing I want to talk about is the ranked game. They've redone the requirements for ranked many times, and I think that they need to go to a level 40 requirement. Another thing that I think they need to do with casual is they need to make casual literally exactly like ranked. Maybe add 30 seconds to the timer or something, but not the way it is right now. It needs to be exactly the same. That means allowing players to choose their spawns, where they want to defend, all that stuff. I want that added into the casual game mode. Literally, I want casual to be ranked, just unranked, if that makes sense. Maybe add a little bit of time on the timer. Not much, just maybe 15-30 seconds. I think those two changes, the level 40 requirement and the casual changes, is gonna up the competitive environment once you finally get into ranked. That's gonna allow a lot of the lower tier players like copper and the silvers, it's gonna make those ranks a lot better, because a lot of times right now you'll even run into level 20s at gold that have no idea what they're doing. They have like 20 hours played in the game, and you just can lose a game because of it sometimes. And it's really frustrating when you have a teammate that doesn't know what they're doing in a gold level. And a lot of that comes from, one, when you're playing casual, you've got like 20 minutes to do what you want, right? It's insane. You feel like you have so much time. And two, you're not used to having to pick your defensive spot or your attacking spawn, so it doesn't matter to you. So when you hop into a ranked match and all of a sudden those things matter, it's a whole new system to learn, already on top of the shortened times. So sometimes you see players, they're like sitting there, they have 20 seconds left and they're like, oh shit, I've got 20 seconds left, what? So I don't know, I think the level 40 cap, or requirement rather, is a lot more efficient than a level 20. Another thing that a level 40 requirement would help with is smurfing. I think the level 40 requirement would just deter smurfing, because I mean, there's still gonna be smurfs, but it's gonna make the smurfs have to grind tons of extra hours just to be able to play ranked. Anyway, those are my basic thoughts and ideas about the game. I'm having an awesome time playing it. It's really fun. It's something I've picked up on the side casually outside of Counter-Strike, and I'm honestly having a great time playing it. There's obviously going to be a ton of stuff I left out. The idea for this video wasn't necessarily to be a super well researched or even made video, I guess you could say. The idea was just to get my opinions out on the game, only playing like 60-75 hours of it or so. Coming from CS, I just wanted to give my brief opinion on the game and just some basic changes that I could think of. And a lot of this stuff's off the top of my head. It's not a very well thought out video. I just thought it would be something cool to talk about. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe, hit that like button, and see you guys on the other side.